Hello. Welcome to episode 68 of Mark TV, or the Notcast, where I talk about bands and things that interest me. When I started off doing this 6 months ago, I think I felt like a lot of us that at this point in time we'd be coming back to some form of normality, whatever normal was going to be, and that things were going to be opening again, and maybe we might even be going to see bands again or sitting in pubs and things like that. And we're still at least a month off from opening the shops, and probably 3 months off from a removal of all the restrictions. So we've still got a quarter of a year to go, and we've been about 15 months at that point through this thing called COVID, and I've still not run out of U2 albums to talk about. And I'm still somehow managing to stay sane by revisiting the huge expanse that is both my music collection and my movies, and obviously spending a lot of time being interrupted by the cats. Today, episode 68, actually, I'm going to be talking about U2 and their Vertigo tour from 2005-2006, and the live DVDs that go with that. A motion picture, a whole bunch of compilation stuff, a best of album, and a 3D movie. It's a pretty busy period for the band. Now, I know not all of you are going to watch it, because not all of you like U2, and that's absolutely great. I know that some of you like stuff that's far, far heavier, and well, why not? Sometimes what you need is to just crank up the guitars and blast it out. The Vertigo tour. So, in the last episode when I talked about U2, which was about 3 weeks ago, I talked about the How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb album. And I leaned into talking about the singles that went alongside that. I'm going to shift straight over to the live portion of the band's existence around about there. Now, I saw 4 shows on the Vertigo tour, although 2 of them weren't tour shows. The first one that I saw was, I think, in September 2004. I think it was the 15th of September 2004 when the band played BBC's Top of the Pops at White City. And when they played Top of the Pops at White City, they had 2 audiences. So they played in the car park. And there was an area which was for competition winners, which was inside the gates, and there was an area for the general public who didn't need to win a competition that was outside of the gates. I was standing at the station with my face pressed up against the glass. I was one of the general scum public who was outside the gates, and I was right at the front, so I arrived about 2 hours before U2 performed. And there were some iron gates that were shut, but you could see through them because there were bars. It wasn't like solid. And so I saw U2 whilst looking at the band through some iron bars. And I must admit, that was probably my least favourite U2 show. It's my least favourite U2 show for one particular reason, which is the paparazzi. They turned up with lots of very, very, very expensive cameras, tried to barge their way through to the front, and then tried to barge me out of the way so they could take photographs. And they didn't like U2. They didn't care a jot about U2. They could just see a way of making money. And I must admit, I told them quite stridently to go away many, many times during the 8 songs that the band performed. So this was the first performance of the Vertigo era for the band. It was the first live performances of Vertigo, City of Blinding Lights, and All Because of You, which means I saw the first live performances of those songs. And they were filmed and broadcast on BBC's Top of the Pops, which has now gone to the great TV channel in the sky. They also played, I think they played 3 songs as a rehearsal. Then they played the 3 songs again, and they also played She's a Mystery to Me, which was the last time it was performed in Europe, and Desire. And it was okay, and it was all finished by about 7:30. And now I was working in London at the time, so I checked on U2.com, or saw something that said that they were playing that evening, and I just went straight after work. So I went to see U2 in a suit. Obviously fit right in, because they are these days suit rock. That's not a criticism, just some of their fans, including myself, have day jobs where we have to dress up. although obviously I'm not today. So moving on from that, which was my first experience of U2 live in 2004, not my first experience of U2 live ever. The band went on tour, and they opened up in arenas in America, starting on, I think, the 28th of March 2005. And this tour, I think, is quite controversial in terms of some of the fan experiences that there are, and some of the other elements. So first and foremost, the Vertigo tour lasted for 21 months. The band played 131 shows. They sold something like 3.6 million tickets, and they sold every ticket that they put on sale, and they grossed something like $389 million. U2 are a big business at this point, and obviously very popular. They started off in America in arenas. After a couple of promo shows. It's a bootleg DVD of the New York City promo show, by the way. And the first show on the Vertigo tour, the opening night, San Diego, 28th of March 2005. Yes, this is a bootleg DVD. The full show is available to watch in multicam format on YouTube. And I think first and foremost, the band went straight back into arenas in America, and they probably shouldn't have done. The demand was there for them to play stadiums. Oh, I'm being told off by a cat. Hang on, I'm going to press pause. I'm going to let the cat in now. This is where, if I can easily put my hands on a small little fur ball, a little floof, I will show you my cat, who doesn't want to appear on screen, but wants to appear nibbling my toes, because that's what cats do. This guy's been quite affectionate recently, although obviously you may have thought he was horrified by my existence, by the fact that he just wriggled out of my arms. Yeah, me doth think he protesteth too much. Now, going back to U2, so the band put on an arena tour in America, running between the end of March and around about the beginning of June 2005. And this was, I don't think this tour was particularly well executed at this point. There are some mitigating factors around that, which are very clearly explained in U2 by U2, which is probably making its last appearance in this episode. And primarily, I think the issue that we had was that a member of Edge's family was very poorly indeed and needed urgent medical attention. And so the tour routing which had been planned, all the venues which had been booked, all the dates which had been secured had to be moved and reshuffled around, so that Edge was spending no more than 3 days away from his family, and that the places that they were playing were near locations which had the sufficient quality of medical care that needed to be provided. I think it was a admirable and generous decision to go on tour at that point. I think most people would have been completely within their rights to say, no, I'm not going to tour, given how serious the illness was. But from the outside of it, it was not particularly well executed, and I think I'm going to have to talk through the ticket sale process, which is kind of touched upon here. Is that if you're a member of U2.com, at that point a subscription cost $40, and $40 got you what they called a gift, which was normally a CD, and pre-sale access to tickets. And the tickets which were available in the pre-sale were nowhere near sufficient and didn't meet demand. So for a pre-sale, ticket allocation may have been 10% of the venue capacity, which when you're playing arenas is at most 2,000 tickets. And those tickets are often in places that are traditionally difficult to shift. So backs of venues, up at the top of the ceiling, maybe behind the stage, and they're not always cheap. And the tickets were not cheap on this tour. So the most expensive ticket that there was on the American tour was $165. And if inflation adjusted, that is around $235. That is a lot of money by any standard, whether you're seeing U2 in an arena or a stadium or a pub. That is a lot of money, $235. And also, it is higher than the average ticket price that you would get for their contemporaries. So bands like Depeche Mode, bands like New Order, ticket prices for them were not in the $165 bracket. although you could argue that there really are no contemporaries of U2, because there are no bands that have managed to stay together for 40 years with exactly the same lineup and consistently been artistically and commercially successful. That's by the by, because when you're pressing buy and you're spending $310 to buy 2 tickets to see a band, you're expecting things to be at a certain level. It's a financial transaction that is substantial, and it's a financial transaction that is, pretty much for some people their entertainment budget for the month, and probably sometimes many months actually. So the tour wasn't executed particularly well. If you'd spent $40 to get a U2.com subscription, then to find that you weren't able to get any tickets for the shows, even though you'd been promised pre-sale access and a unique code to buy tickets for the tour, you could conceivably and very justifiably say that you've been cheated out of $40, because effectively what you're buying is you're buying access to the tickets. It's an extra ticket price that you pay in advance. And it got to the point where Larry apologised publicly for the execution of it. But I think it was a poorly executed, and I think we can give some leeway to the band in the circumstances, having to reroute the tour at the last minute. But the leeway didn't exist when it came to the ticket prices. They were very expensive. So the indoor part of the tour started in America, and the band played a number of shows, and they spent quite some time working out the set lists. So in these days I was home burning and printing off bootleg DVDs. So here's the DVD of the first 2 San Diego shows. Now this second San Diego show is quite important to me, because that was the day that I became a father, and so there went my plans of seeing U2 play the opening night of a particular tour, and for bloody good reason too. But these 2 shows were the start of the tour. The band were working out a set list, and at this point the band had created a kind of a narrative. They'd built chunks of music which worked together, and I'm going to talk through the standard set list that we've got for the tour and what that means. This is another bootleg DVD. This is from Anaheim, which is the 3rd show, I think, of the tour, which has a different intro, and in fact the first 6 or 7 songs are completely different from what they played on here. So a typical show on the indoor leg opened with City of Blinding Lights, Vertigo, and sometimes Electric Co. So City of Blinding Lights and Vertigo were chosen for 2 reasons. One, City of Blinding Lights is a song that touches upon a great many things, including being internationalism and innocence. Vertigo, as I've mentioned in the previous episode, had lots of lyrics that are about confusion, maturity and immaturity, and temptation. And by the time the band got to this point, Chicago, they filmed the first official DVD release from the tour, which is Vertigo Live in Chicago. So I'm going to use this as the template for the tour. And the tour was built around a narrative. So we had a section which was Vertigo, Elevation, Electric Co, Into the Heart. And that was kind of like a section which brought back both the very modern songs and the very old songs, and put the 2 together in a context. And then moved into a period of celebration, which was around a beautiful day, New Year's Day, songs about hope and renewed enthusiasm. And the set list kind of moved over to more modern songs there. So they had Miracle Drug and Sometimes You Can't Make It On Your Own. And those are 2 songs that are very clearly about mortality. So Miracle Drug has that beautiful verse sung by Edge, where he goes, in science and in medicine, I hear your voice, it's whispering below the noise and above the din. And it's a wonderful verse. But the song is all about, the power of health and medicine, and Sometimes You Can't Make It On Its Own is about the failure of that with the death of Bono's father. And it was kind of like the loss of innocence is captured in those 2 songs, and the imagery that sits alongside it. And then the next section of the set, which I call the Heart of Darkness section of the set, had 4 or 5 songs that all sat together, very rarely played in a different sequence. So Love and Peace or Else, Sunday Bloody Sunday, Bullet the Blue Sky, Running to Stand Still, and Pride. And those songs were generally always played in a sequence together to create a narrative through line around war, conflict, belief and religion, with the resolution that came up Where the Streets Have No Name and One. And that was the end of your main set. And the encore was a mini Zoo TV period, which had The Fly, Mysterious Ways, Zoo Station, Sometimes With or Without You, And then the last encore, the third part of the show, was generally a lump of new material, all because of you. Sometimes original of the species, Yahweh, which was obviously a resolution of the crisis of faith that occurred earlier in the set. And then on the indoor leg, mostly ending with 40, which obviously is a song that's based upon a psalm. Now, the set list that they've got there is pretty good. It's pretty solid. But what we would find is that, in fact, it was the most predictable of the tours in terms of the set list. Up to that point was very, very rigid, generally speaking. And especially when the band got to the European level of the tour, the set list became very, very predictable indeed, with one minor exception. But this is a U2 live in Chicago, which is shot on the, it says it's shot on, I think, the 10th of May, but there's a, I think there's part, it's filmed on the 9th and 10th of May 2005. There might be some extra shots that were filmed on the 7th and the 12th of May as well in Chicago. And the band played 6 nights in Chicago indoors, which means that they actually played 3 times as many shows in Chicago as they did in London. They didn't sell 3 times as many tickets. They probably played the equivalent of 2 stadiums over those 6 shows. In Europe, they went straight to stadiums. And the stadium leg of the tour, I thought, was quite average. The staging was very, very similar to Elevation. There was like almost like an ellipse, which was in front of the stage. There was like a little section inside which had fans in it. In the stadiums, the ellipse actually spread out into 2 separate. So there's the ellipse there, and in stadiums, effectively, there was a stage here and a stage there, and this section here in the middle didn't join. But the show, when it got to the stadiums in Europe, I thought was quite disappointing compared to the set list that we had in America. And so, for example, a lot of the songs that they played in America, they played once in Europe. So if you went to see the band in Europe, they didn't play 40, they didn't play Gloria, they didn't play Uncapped Dub, they didn't play Into the Heart, apart from one Monday night in Dublin. Every other show on that 3-month tour, they didn't play those songs. So if you loved U2 and you wanted to see them and you wanted them to end with 40, they played one show out of about 35 where they closed with 40 because they were in stadiums. And this is where I think they did the thing which I found perhaps very, very annoying about the Vertigo tour. And a good example of that is the Twickenham Stadium show, which was broadcast on BBC Radio. Here is, unsurprisingly, a bootleg CD of that show. And that is that they played Vertigo twice, at the start and at the end of the show, once in daylight without any of the staging, and once at night with all the lights blaring and all the lasers and everything like that. Now, with Vertigo played twice, I was very, very annoyed about that, because U2 aren't some new fledgling band. They aren't some band that's not rehearsed enough. They aren't some band that hasn't got hits. At this point, they're 10 albums into their career. 200 songs they've got. They've rehearsed lots and lots of material. They've got songs that they play at one show in 40, and yet they're playing the big hit from the album twice, once at the beginning and once at the end. Now, I know encore means again, but that wasn't sufficient or satisfactory. Out of all the songs that they could have played, why wouldn't they have added Gloria, for example, which is a great live song, but I didn't get to see them play Gloria until 2015. Why didn't they play Bad, which they played on next to no shows in 2005, especially in Europe? Or why didn't they play Uncapped Dub, Into the Heart, 40 to end the show, for example? It was very, very predictable, and to me, the end of the show was Yahweh, which was the traditional conclusion. It was the last song on the album. And it was the sorry, I got distracted by a cat. Last song on the album, and also it was the song which has a resolution of all the crisis of faith and belief and ethics, which you'd have heard earlier on throughout the show. But no, let's play Vertigo again. It gets the grannies in the stands rocking, except why? If you're a band that's just started and you've got 13 songs and you need to do a 14-song set, and your existing songs last 55 minutes and you're contracted for an hour, play an extended version of your biggest hit at the end and play it at the beginning. Don't do that when you're 25 years into your career. Don't do it when you're 200 songs into your career. Don't do it when you're 10 albums, and don't do it when you're charging $165 for a bloody ticket, because it is a rip-off. Bearing in mind that when U2 play, and let's just take Chicago here. So this has, I think, 21 songs on it. So you're paying about $7 per song to see U2. And if what you're getting is one song repeated twice, that then becomes, you know, $7.50 per song. And $7 a song is expensive. $165 per show is expensive. Hang on. This cat wants to play with my records. I'm going to have to pick him up and take him out of the way. Okay, darling, I'm going to put you down. There you are. Sorry, he was nibbling on an album. So the second show that I saw, Twickenham. Well, actually, no, that was the third show on the tour that I saw, which was Twickenham. The second show was Manchester, some of which was broadcast on British television. The third show, which I saw, was Twickenham Stadium. This is a radio broadcast from the other night at Twickenham. And I mean, I enjoyed the show. It was very good. I've never seen U2 play a bad show. But it wasn't the best show the band could have played. Now, there's another couple of releases as we kind of go through the tour. This is an unofficial bootleg CD recorded in Dublin on the 25th of June. It does have Out of Control on it, which they only played 9 times on the tour. It does have All I Want Is You on it, which was played in a rotational slot with Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses. And it does have Party Girl on, which the band didn't play very often. But again, it ends with Vertigo, which is not sufficient or satisfactory at all. Hang on. Dude, what do you want? Cat's being a pain here. He's found something and he's ricketing around with it. Now, the fan club release that we had for, I think, 2005 was this, U2 Communication, which is a double CD. One CD is 8 songs of live audio recorded in Chicago and Milan. The Chicago stuff comes from the Chicago DVD, and the second one is a CD-ROM, which is Vertigo live from Milan as a video, screensavers, wallpapers, and in the days when people would do CD-ROMs, access to a website, which these days, of course, you can do by just typing six digits into your machine. But that's the U2 fan club release from the period. Now, there was one more show. The last show that I saw in the Vertigo era was Live 8, which was at Hyde Park in London on July the 2nd, 2005, which means the day before my birthday, I got to see U2, I got to see REM, I got to see Coldplay, I got to see Pink Floyd, for God's sake, and I got to see Madonna. And the show went on very, very late. It was an absolutely huge show. It's probably the biggest show I will ever go to. I think there was something like 175,000 or 200,000 people that were there. I've never seen so many people. And I saw Robbie Williams at Nebworth, so I've seen a lot of people. I've been at gigs that have been, 3 times larger than the town that I live in, which is pretty bonkers when you think about it like that. But Live 8 was the last time that I saw U2 during this campaign, and I felt a little bit annoyed because I knew that the band had a lot more touring left to do than they toured for another 18 months after this, and they didn't play Europe after, I think, they ended the show and they ended the tour in August 2005. So 4 songs at Live 8. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band with Sir Paul McCartney, Thumbs Aloft, of the Beatles, which means I've seen a Beatle. That puts me in a very, very big group indeed. And also U2 played 3 separate songs after Paul McCartney had left the stage. So I think they played Beautiful Day, Vertigo, and One. And at this point, I think it's fair to say, even though we were in the first quarter of the crowd, that's still 50,000 people. That's still like standing at the back of a football stadium. And I kid you not, U2 were smaller than Lego men. So I'm just going to pick up a random Lego man here. Let's pretend that this is a member of the band. can't be Edge because he's not wearing a hat. But you know, U2 were smaller than this to me. They were probably about half this size, and it's pretty weird to watch a band when the band are actually about a quarter of a mile away from you. I mean, if I ran straight at the stage and I was an Olympic athlete, it would have taken me probably 40 seconds to have got there, assuming that there hadn't been 50,000 people in the way. And it was at such a point that you know, I could hear the band before I saw the hand gestures because the distance and the size was so big. So thank God for video screens, because the delay between the video and the video screen somehow made it so that it all kind of vaguely lined up, but it did feel very much like watching a large television in your neighbour's garden. And the other thing with Live 8 was that although entrance was by being selected after entering by text message, so it cost me £1.50 for the 2 tickets for Live 8, it did cost me £7 for a box of chips, and the box of chips was no bigger than this DVD. So as you can imagine, when they were talking about making poverty history, the poverty they were probably talking about were the people selling the chips, because £7 for a pack for a tray of chips with curry sauce on, it was a rip-off now, let alone a rip-off 16 years ago. I haven't even done the inflation adjusted part of it. It was probably £11. I was absolutely starving at the end of the show. And the other thing about the end of the show is the show ran on very, very late indeed. Pink Floyd came on stage, I think 11 o'clock. They finished at 11:24 maybe, and the last train which I had to get from Victoria to my home was, I think, about 2 minutes past 12, or would have to pay £50 to get a cab home. So we decided, rather, because certainly seeing Paul McCartney wasn't worth £50 in taxi fares at that point, even if we could get a taxi. So as soon as Pink Floyd finished, we basically just ran straight out, ran down to Victoria, got on the train. We were all jammed in with loads of other people that had left the show early. And quite happy to have Pink Floyd as the finale of the night. Now, because lots and lots of people stuck about, they missed their last bus or train home. I think about 7,000 people slept in Hyde Park overnight after the show. We weren't one of those. So I turned 32 half an hour after I saw Pink Floyd, which is pretty amazing. Also pretty weird to have your birthday happen when you're on a crowded train, but so be it. So after that, by the way, the band carried on touring, and the stadium leg in Europe kind of carried on. Now, it's going to get a bit blurry here, but hopefully you'll take this in the spirit in which it was meant. The outdoor European stadium shows were substantially different in staging and presentation to the indoor shows. And one of those shows from Milan was filmed and included as a bonus DVD on the 2006 compilation U218, which had little overlap in terms of songs with the Chicago DVD. So this one, for example, has I Will Follow, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, All I Want Is You, Miss Sarajevo, and With or Without You on, which aren't on the Chicago DVD. Miss Sarajevo was a late addition to the set. I think the band were playing the third night in a stadium, probably in Amsterdam, and they decided instead of playing Running to Stand Still, they played Miss Sarajevo, and then it became a staple of the tour from then on. But what that means is, you know, Miss Sarajevo is the one song in the U2 canon that has the longest gap between recording and release and its first live performance in Dublin. So it was recorded and released in 1995. Its first live performance in Dublin was over 120 or so performances later in Dublin in 2017, 22 years after the song was originally released. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because there is an American arena leg that the band did, the third leg in arenas, and as they said in this book, U2 by U2, I know most of these videos appear to me that I'm just actually quoting from this book, but they said, so Paul says it's a pity America missed out on the stadium shows, and I would like to take it to America because it would knock people's socks off. And Edge said it probably should have been a stadium tour, but because of the shortage of tickets when the first leg went on sale, we put the second leg up earlier, and we made a commitment to playing the venues. In hindsight, we solved the problem, but the cost was that we could have sold stadium tickets. And so, certainly the perspective I have is that in America, U2 are probably seen as an arena band, and a big arena band that sometimes plays stadiums, whereas in the rest of the world, U2 are generally seen as a stadium band that sometimes plays arenas, and that's because of the decision that they made around about there. So come the fourth leg of the tour, by the time they got to the third leg, which was the indoor American leg, the band were being very, very flexible with their set list. They were taking requests from people that they were meeting on the day. I think they played Fast Cars and Crumbs from Your Table because they'd been talking to somebody outside the venue who said, "Why don't you play Fast Cars?" And then one of them said, "Why don't we play Fast Cars?" And then someone else said, "Yeah, let's play Fast Cars." And that's pretty much how the set list decisions were being made at that point. The fourth leg of the tour went into stadiums, and this was later released in 2008 as a 3D only IMAX motion picture called U2 3D that was compiled from over 700 hours of footage shot at I think 9 or 10 shows using cutting edge 3D technology. And the band invested a lot of money into that 3D technology. They were a business. Presumably they invested that money into 3D technology and then filmed their own shows largely as a bit of an ego trip. Here's a flyer from the BFI from March 2008 that said that U2 3D is an IMAX experience. And the flyer for this, by the way, folds out to a lovely poster. I think I've still got some of these, by the way, so if I'm sending you any post, let me know and I'll send you one of these if I can find some more. But U2 3D was released in cinemas in March 2008, and it was filmed at a number of the shows, being Mexico, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, and Melbourne, and I think Sydney as well. I mean, I could be wrong about all of those, but effectively, U2 3D has never been seen domestically. It's not been released on DVD, Blu-ray, VHS, or CD, or anything like that. The only way that you can really experience U2 3D is to go and see the film at the cinema. And as far as I can tell, it hasn't shown at cinema for a few years. I have a sneaking suspicion that when U2 open a museum in Dublin, which they've recently got planning permission for, is that they will then show U2 3D as an attraction there. And if you go to see the U2 museum in Dublin, that might be the only place in the world where you want to see, or where you could see U2 3D, for example. But if you can't see U2 3D, and plenty of people can't, a couple of the shows on the South American Stadium Tour were filmed. So I think Sao Paulo was broadcast on television, and then also this show, which was Buenos Aires on March the 2nd, 2006, which was the last stadium show of the South American run, was broadcast live as it happened on Argentinian television. There is a version of it that's got a narrator and an announcer and pretty terrible picture quality. This bootleg DVD is as good as you can get, and certainly as far as I'm concerned, this is as close as I can get to a DVD version of U2 3D. The whole show, by the way, is free on YouTube. I'll post a link, so you don't have to buy the DVD. I bought the DVD in the days before I could download stuff off YouTube, by the way. So U2 3D was compiled from stadium shows. It's a 14-song set list, and it would make an ideal fan club subscription package, by the way, if you're listening from U2.com, because it hasn't been officially released. And if you can't go with that, then go with this, which is one of the shows that was filmed for that release, and this is a fully shot, mixed broadcast television quality show from that edge. So as far as I'm concerned, from that end of the tour, so as far as I'm concerned, that Buenos Aires show is U2 3D, because I can't get away with watching U2 3D. Now, there was another couple of things that happened. The band came to the end of the South American leg, and they had 2 weeks off before they then started the final few shows, which was due to run March through to the middle of April, and then the tour would come to an end. Those shows were postponed until November and December 2006 because of, again, an illness in, I think, Edge's family, and the tour was rescheduled. So the band were all set and raring to go. They'd printed all the t-shirts, they had the stadium staging and all the equipment was on a boat going over to the first show, and everything came to an end. So the band found themselves having to, I think, create a victory lap to sustain the Vertigo 2006 tour with these hastily rearranged shows. And they came up with a solution. I don't think it is a particularly good solution. It is U218, the singles, which fulfills the third and final of the compilation release commitments that the band had made when they signed a new deal in 1988. I am going to be pretty scathing around this release. It is, I think, crassly commercial. The track listing is utterly pointless, and I don't understand why this photograph is on the front. It is not an iconic photograph of the band. This period of the band is not represented in any of the material that's on here. Many of the songs that are on here have already been on the best of 1890 or 90 to 2000. So, for example, the only songs which haven't been on there are Vertigo, one's been on there as well. So Vertigo, Walk On, Elevation, Sometimes You Can't Make It On Your Own, The Saints Are Coming, and Windows in the Sky. So effectively, you've got one side and one song. So you've got 6 songs on this, haven't been on the previous best ofs. This is an open goal, an opportunity sadly missed. The band could have done a singles compilation that tied up all the songs which hadn't been on the best of 1890 or 90 to 2000. So that means they could have had a celebration, Gloria. They could have put songs like In God's Country on, or Lemon, the remix and re-recordings of Last Night on Earth, Please. All those songs not on here. So you've got, for the second time in 8 years, the opportunity to buy a greatest hits that has, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, Where the Streets Have No Name, Pride, With or Without You. Or for the second time in 4 years, you've got an opportunity to buy a best of that features Beautiful Day, that features Mysterious Ways, One. It's a pretty pointless release. Actually, I do not like it at all. The selection of songs on here is not. It doesn't. There's no reason for it to exist apart from separating fans from their money, really, if I'm really honest. And the band could have done a number of variations of it. They could have done a 3 CD version which stacked up all of the singles in chronological release order. That would have been satisfactory. They could have taken the songs that hadn't been on the best of 90, 2000 and 80 to 90 and put them on here, and maybe put a photograph that wasn't 25 years old of a version of the lineup and a period of the band that's not represented on here. It's just a bad idea, and I really didn't like it at all. It felt crass, it felt exploitative, it felt like a way of going, hey guys, buy this because we're touring and we need to release something to make a bit of money. You could argue that maybe it tied in with the band's 30th anniversary, but if that was the case, you could have done a double CD called it U230, one for every year of the band's career, and given them a full career overview, as opposed to kind of like 18 songs, only 12 of which had been on previous greatest hits albums in the past decade. There were a number of editions of this that were released. The band also, of course, released a DVD which featured a number of promos. This one has 28 tracks on it, including some alternate versions. So it's got 3 versions of One on it, but it hasn't got the most recent single version of One. And it's got a number of other tracks that are on there. Hang on a second, I'll see if I can find it. No, I haven't picked it up. So in early 2006, there was a single of One, which was a duet with U2 and Mary J. Blige. That's not on here. No, you've got the standard version of One that came out as a hit single 15 years ago that's on here. You've got 3 videos of that. You haven't got the Mary J. Blige version, which came out 9 months ago. You've got 2 videos of Stuck in a Moment on here. You haven't got the videos for, and I'm going to quickly rattle off, you haven't got the videos for I Will Follow, Sunday Bloody Sunday. I don't think Pride's on there, but you haven't got the videos for a lot of the tracks. So When Love Comes to Town, I don't think Angel of Harlem's on here, All I Want Is You isn't on here. Those songs have still not been released on DVD, and it's just an open goal with a kind of like what feels like a subcontracted selection of songs where they got, you know, George from The Office to pull together a playlist of the 18 biggest selling singles, throw in a couple of the new ones. Will it do? No. No, must try harder. Even the deluxe edition of it, which comes out on a DVD in a book pack with, again, some photographs of you know, the band in there. The DVD that comes with it is a 10-song live set from Milan, which if you bought Chicago, you've already got a show of that tour on DVD. And of course, you've already got the U23D that's lining up in the wings. There was a number of singles that were released from U218. The first one is a duet with Green Day, The Saints Are Coming. Not my favourite U2 song, I think it's fair to say, and the cover version. You've got, let's move that out of the way, that's the UK version of U218, which by the way features The Fly, I think, on it, or it starts with I Will Follow, actually. There's the single for Windows in the Sky, and Windows in the Sky is a really great song, very heavily kind of dripping in Beatles influences. This version has a version of a song called Tower of Song with U2 and Leonard Cohen on there, which is also on the CD single. And the second CD single features Zoo Station live from Buenos Aires and Kite from Sydney. So you can pull together a pretty compelling live release from the tour. But there's a load of songs which the band recorded which aren't on here. So Instant Karma, which is the cover version of John Lennon, which the band played several times, isn't on the best of. Tower of Song isn't on the best of. The version of One with Mary J. Blige is not on the best of. And it really just feels like it was put together without much thought around what a satisfactory release would be that would please fans. Now, so as far as I'm concerned, U218 is awful. The worst U2 compilation album, the one U2 record that doesn't really have a reason to exist, in my opinion, in terms of an album release. It's the best of that seems to exist in order to remind you that, hey, we're the band that made Vertigo 2 years ago, we're still here, and we can fulfill the third part of our greatest hits contract. Buy us, guys, buy us, yes. Oh, and if you don't, then yeah, we'll put 10 songs on a DVD. Oh, that'll be worth 20 quid, right? It's not, you know, it's a decision which felt like it was made by people that were outside of the band, who saw the band as a way of making money as opposed to a genuine and valid creative or commercial entity. There is no reason for U218 to exist, and if U218 must exist, then it should have a different cover that reflects a more recent photograph of the band and a different selection of songs that are on it. The version that is released is one that, were I in the band, I would definitely go thumbs down. That's not the version we're sticking out. We're putting out one that's actually value for money. Now, the last thing I will mention is, as I mentioned earlier, the t-shirts were printed for the cancelled end of the tour, which means that U2 had lots and lots of unsold tour stock, which means, and considering I was a member of the fan club at the time, I had a 25% merch discount. When they put all of the unsold tour t-shirts on sale for $8, if you got 25% off, that worked out at $6. At the time, a dollar was worth 50p. So I got something like 20 U2 t-shirts for something like £50. And so therefore the Vertigo tour is the one that is most well represented in the number of t-shirts which I've got. And as you may have noticed, I'm wearing the Three Symbols t-shirt. Every U2 tour between 1992 and 2009 featured the Three Symbols imagery, and it was a thing where if you went to the show and they were selling the Three Symbols t-shirt, you bought the t-shirt. And they stopped doing it for the Innocence and Experience tour in 2015. I wish they hadn't, but as I've been told, I've got too many U2 t-shirts anyway, so why would I want to buy any more? Okay, so wrapping up, The Vertigo tour was, I think, a really interesting piece of narrative work. It was a very successful tour creatively and commercially. There's the live in Chicago release, which is well worth getting. Live 8 is worth having for a unique performance in daylight. The U218 deluxe edition, if you need the outdoor European stadium leg, this is the best version to get. And if you can find it, a copy of the Buenos Aires show. Be careful which one you get. This one doesn't have any Spanish narrator, and it has the best picture quality. I'm going to wrap up there. I'm going to send you a link to YouTube so you can see some of the shows on YouTube. I'm just going to quickly pick up my friend, the less than pleased cat. I'd have made a terrible Blofeld. He says goodbye. I will see you at another episode at some point soon. Hopefully, take care of yourselves and each other. Don't be a dick in the comments, and I will see you all again soon. Okay, bye.